The humid air of the way station's main concourse clung to everything, thick with the scent of recycled oxygen, alien spices, and the underlying tang of industrial cleaner. He moved through the crowd, a maintenance technician in plain gray coveralls, his toolkit a familiar weight against his thigh. His day had been a long series of minor repairs, from a malfunctioning hydration dispenser in Sector G to a flickering atmospheric processor here in the central hub. All he wanted was a quiet corner in the lower level, mess hall, and a bowl of whatever the synthesizer deemed palatable. His path took him past the diplomatic lounge, its entrance framed by shimmering light filters that softened the glare of the station's artificial suns. A group was emerging, a cluster of aides and officials in sharp formal attire orbiting a central figure. She was the newly arrived ambassador from the Celian Compact, and her presence seemed to part the crowds as effectively as a starship's bow shield. The Celians were known for their crystalline biology, their forms appearing as if sculpted from living gemstone. But where others of her kind were often described as elegant or sharp, she possessed a different geometry dot. Her form was a harmony of smooth, flowing lines, where light did not simply reflect, but seemed to pool and glide, like liquid amber over quartz. It was a figure that spoke of a different gravity, a different evolution, a profound and powerful beauty that was less about attraction and more about awe, like observing a perfect natural phenomenon. The thought formed in his mind, pure and unguarded after his long, tired day. A silent observation of the sheer artistic brilliance of alien biology at that exact moment. A public address mic, which he had repaired just an hour prior, short-circuited in his hand. A sharp pop echoed, and a feedback squeal ripped through the concourse. Startled, he fumbled with the device, and his quiet, internal thought was vocalized not into the mic, but directly into the sudden silence that followed the squeal's cessation. Stunning curvature. A perfect equilibrium of form and function. His voice, clear and carrying, fell into the hush. He froze. The entire diplomatic party stopped. A dozen pairs of eyes, both organic and crystalline, swiveled toward him. His own eyes widened in pure, undiluted horror. He had not meant to speak. It was an accident, a technical glitch of his own making, leading to a personal catastrophe. The Celians were notoriously private, their forms rarely commented upon directly by other species. A cultural line he had just clumsily vaulted over. The ambassador turned fully. Her features, etched in facets of warm topaz, were unreadable. She took 2 steps toward him, her movements silent and fluid. The crowd held its breath. He braced for the cold, formal reprimand, for security to be called, for his station clearance to be revoked. This was a diplomatic incident he had caused with a single misplaced observation. She stopped an arm's length away. Her voice, when it came, was not the sharp crack of crystal he expected. It was low, melodic, like stones shifting in a deep tide. It carried through the silent concourse without effort. "You perceive equilibrium," she stated. It was not a question. He could only nod, his throat tight. "Your species relies on bipedal symmetry for balance," she continued, her gem-like eyes regarding him not with anger, but with a piercing curiosity. "You see a pleasing shape. You categorize it as aesthetic. This is your primary interpretation." He found his voice, a weak thread of sound. It was an observation. "Forgive the intrusion. The mic malfunctioned." She dismissed the mic with a slight, elegant turn of her wrist. "The instrument failed. The observation did not. You used the terms curvature and equilibrium, not beauty, not lovely. Scientific terms, engineers' terms." She paused, and the silence deepened. "My people have interacted with 17 sentient species since joining the galactic community. 16 have offered poetic compliments on our appearance. They see only the surface. They speak of sparkle and light. They project their own ideals of beauty onto our geometry. She took a half-step closer. He could see the slow, internal pulse of light within her core. A rhythmic, golden beat. "You are the first," she said, her voice now a confidential murmur that still somehow filled the space. "To look upon a Celian and see not a jewel, but a structure. You saw the mathematics. You saw the physics of my form, the stress distribution, the load-bearing elegance. You saw the engineering." He was utterly speechless. This was not the script. There was no anger, no coldness. There was something else, something like recognition. "On my world," she said, "the highest compliment is not on the brilliance of the crystal, but on the perfection of its lattice, the strength of its bonds. You, a human in maintenance coveralls holding a broken microphone, you gave me the highest compliment my culture recognizes. You called me strong. You called me efficient. You called me sound." She turned to her aides, whose stony faces now seemed to shimmer with surprise. Note this interaction. The human subspecies designation engineer or technician may have a perceptive framework that bypasses superficial aesthetic bias. It is a perspective of profound respect. Schedule a discourse on comparative structural biology with this station's engineering cores. She turned back to him. He was still grappling with the tectonic shift in reality. His accidental, clumsy comment had been translated into the highest form of praise. "You are embarrassed," she observed. "Do not be. You have, as your people say, spoken your mind. It was a mind worth hearing. My response is this: thank you for seeing truly." With a final, slight incline of her head, a gesture she must have learned was polite for humans, she glided away, her retinue scrambling to follow, already tapping on data-slates that the crowd in the concourse remained still for a moment longer, then burst into a wave of murmurs. He stood rooted to the spot, the faulty mic hanging limply from his fingers. The story, of course, did not end there. It spread through the way station with the speed of a data burst. The technician who had complimented a Celian ambassador into a diplomatic breakthrough. He was summoned not to security, but to the office of the station chief. "Well," the chief said, leaning back, a faint smile on her face. "That's one for the manual. The Celians have requested you specifically as a liaison for their technical exchange team. They want a human who sees the lattice. Seems your job description just expanded. His life altered its course that day. He was no longer just a maintenance technician. He became a bridge. In the following weeks, he found himself in meetings, not with wrenches and circuit boards, but with Celian engineers. They discussed structural integrity, force distribution, and the elegant solutions evolution had crafted for their crystalline forms. He learned that what he had seen as a curvature was, in fact, a highly efficient shock dissipation system. The equilibrium was a permanent state of harmonic balance that allowed them to withstand atmospheric pressures that would crush a human. He learned their language, not of words, but of stresses and strains. He showed them human designs, our arches, our geodesic domes, our use of alloys and composites. They were fascinated by our concept of safety factors and redundancy. The exchange flourished. Months later, during a joint project to reinforce the station's outer ring against micrometeoroid impacts, he worked alongside the ambassador again. The project was her initiative. They stood in a quiet observation blister, watching as nanofilament, designed from a fusion of Celian crystal growth patterns and human material science, was applied to the hull. "You see it now, do you not?" she asked, her faceted eyes watching the workers. "The true form, not just the surface light." He nodded. "I see the lattice. In everything you build, it's brilliant." She emitted a soft, chiming sound, a Celian laugh. "And you, technician? Do you see the lattice in your own kind?" He looked at his own hands, the lines of tendon and bone under skin. He thought of the human skeleton, the double curve of the spine, the dome of the skull. "I'm starting to," he said. "We're not so elegantly designed. More. Patched together over time." "A different kind of strength," she replied. "Resilience through adaptation. A fascinating structural principle. Perhaps the next topic of discourse." He smiled, looking from the stars outside to the ambassador beside him. His accidental comment had not been a breach. It had been a translation. He had not complimented her figure in the way of a poet, but in the language of a builder. And her response, the revelation that his way of seeing was not rude, but profoundly respectful, had left him speechless. It had opened a door, not just for him, but for a new understanding between species. It turned out that in a universe of infinite perspectives, sometimes seeing someone as they truly are, as a masterpiece of engineering, a wonder of practical design, was the most human thing of all, and the most appreciated.